Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's NASA Multi-User Spaceport briefing, live from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We're very happy today to be joined by a distinguished panel that I would like to introduce before we get started. Seated next to me, Bob Cabana, Kennedy Space Center Director. Next to Bob, Michael Gass, United Launch Alliance President and CEO. Frank DeBello, Space Florida President and CEO. Mark Sorangelo, Corporate Vice President and Head of Sierra Nevada Corporation's Space Systems. Larry Price, Lockheed Martin Space Systems Deputy Program Manager for NASA's Orion spacecraft. And Steve Lindsay, former NASA astronaut and Sierra Nevada Corporation's Senior Director and Dream Chaser Program Manager. And with that, I'll turn things over to Mr. Cabana. Bob?
Well, thanks, Mike. First off, let me say what a pleasure it is for me to have this team together here at the Kennedy Space Center today for Sierra Nevada's announcements. Long before the shuttle retired, KSC started charting its path towards the future. And that future is to be the nation's preeminent launch complex for both government and commercial flights, crew and cargo, to and from low Earth orbit and beyond. And we are well on our way to making that happen. And I think today's announcements cement that in place, but it also shows the faith that the commercial industry has in KSC moving forward to make that happen. So I think it's a real positive for not just NASA and our nation, but for the community here at KSC. We are on the right track, and this is our year to really move forward and make things happen. And it's going to be a great year for the Kennedy Space Center, and this is a great way to get it started. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mark Sorangelo from Sierra Nevada to share with us what's going to be coming.
Thank you, Bob. And it's a terrific pleasure for us to be here as well. And I'd like to first start by saying thank you to Bob and his entire team for helping us put this together. The staff who runs the press center here is amazing, and the amount of work that needs to go into something like this is terrific, and we really do appreciate that extra effort. And we have a lot of special guests in the audience as well, and thank you all for coming over. I know it's a big day for launch today, and it's really exciting for us as well. We love what we do, so thank you for being here and being part of this. You know, a number of years ago, NASA had to make a choice, and it's been a very, in our view, a wonderful choice to look at the future and say, how do we do business differently? It took a lot of courage by the NASA leadership to say, this is something that needs to change. We want America to go back to space. We want America to be part of the human spaceflight program. We have a long-distance program in Orion and SLS, which is planned, but we also want to put some energy into finding a new way to get to low Earth orbit. And that courage that was exhibited by Charlie Bolden and Robert Lightfoot and Bill Gerstenmaier and the whole team really is something that most people don't realize. And we're very thankful for them standing up and saying, we can do things differently. We can really make a difference. And Sierra Nevada and the team that you see around us is the product of that. We put a lot of our own energy in because we saw that there was a really positive public-private partnership that we were able to work forward and work towards. It hasn't been an easy road, and in many ways NASA has had to persevere and really do something that's quite different. 2003 was, I think, a very pivotal year for what we're trying to accomplish. And I think when you look back on what happened during this year, we could really see the opportunities that have really changed and really made this a very interesting place for us to be. The NASA program for commercial crew really has started now about 4 years ago. And it has worked its way through 4 different competitions. We're in the middle of something called CCI Cap right now. But most importantly, I think, beyond the program is what's actually happened. There's been tremendous success in the program. Certainly, we've seen what SpaceX and Elon Musk and Gwynne Shotwell and their team have done, and it's been an amazing feat of technology, and we are quite fortunate to have that kind of energy go into it. We've also seen the work that Boeing has been able to accomplish in the past year. And in our case, we had a wonderful 2013. We conducted the first flight of our Dream Chaser. And that vehicle, after many years of being able to be in my head and in people's head, turned into reality. And the greatest thrill you can see is when you see something you believe in and dream in turn into hardware and see that hardware fly. So we're very fortunate to start our flight test program in 2013. But it doesn't end there. We started 2014 with I think, an equally wonderful thing, and we saw orbital science which is now on the space station, launch Cygnus and begin a second resupply program to the ISS. And we're very fortunate to be part of the team, and I wanted to congratulate Dave Thompson and Frank Culbertson and Orbital. We're part of the team in that we built the berthing mechanism for Cygnus, and in fact the mechanism that is now letting that spaceship attach to the ISS. But it's been a wonderful experience for us, and those guys did a terrific job in making that program work. We also are very proud in seeing that this year, 14, will mark the launch of the Orion program. Many of us have waited for a long time for this to happen, and the idea of going beyond low Earth orbit and taking the next step. And Lockheed has done a terrific job in making that program work, and I've seen the vehicle, and it looks like it's something that should go beyond Earth, and it will go beyond Earth. And I think that brings us to part of why we're talking about today. It's a connection between the heritage and the past of what our program is and the future of what it can be. And the idea of that we are, as you will see, a lifting body vehicle, a space plane, we didn't just come up with that idea. That idea was being really brought forth by thousands of people who worked on this idea for many, many years. And we can't talk about a program like this without really tipping our hat and saying thank you to the many thousands of men and women out the Space Shuttle program who really made that a success. And after 135 missions, you really look back, and I look back and I say it's amazing what was accomplished in that. Not just building the space station, which a lot of people look to, but in my personal view, doing things like fixing the Hubble telescope, which has given us an amazing view as to what our life is. We also see a change in what's going on, and we all know that Washington and politics these days is difficult. But in I think, a very strong show of support for this program, we saw both Democrats and Republicans and people from all regions get together and really stand behind, mainly because of, I think, a tremendous outreach effort that was done by NASA and by my commercial crew partners to really make the case for why this program is important. And we saw an increase for 2014 that just came out for this program, and an indication that going and bringing humans to low Earth orbit is something that's going to be a priority for our country in the future. For the last 9 years, we have been building Dream Chaser, and there are many reasons for why we did that. But we first looked at it and said there's really two primary aspects of the Dream Chaser. One is that it has a significant amount of value. Much like the Space Shuttle, we will land on a runway. We come home with less than 2 Gs. We're able to transport people and critical cargo back and forth to the space station. We're highly reusable. Shuttle Discovery flew 39 times. We're expecting to get that type of reusability out of it. And the vehicle is meant to do many things in space. It's not just about the technology behind it, but it's about what you can do in space. And in our case, we look at what we can do in terms of working in space, discovering in space, and observing from space. Being a transportation mechanism, helping to build things, being able to help fix things, and being able for us to learn and explore in space is an amazing part of what we do. I'd like to take a moment and just recap our program. We have a very short video that we'd like to share with you. And we're about 70% complete with our current program at NASA. And this video will give you a sense of how this started, and for many of you, what it's like to take something from a thought in your head to bring it to reality. So if I could show that video, I'd be happy. We had a very historic and in our view a very successful flight. We won't be able to show all the data from that flight today, but we do have one slide that shows really what we're trying to accomplish. What you see in the slide is essentially the actual flight path of the vehicle, and there are two lines. You might not be able to see them, and in our world that's a good thing, because one line is supposed to be how we're going to fly, and the other is how we did fly. And when you can't see the difference between the two, you've had a good day. And we had a good day, and that's really what this was about for us. But as we look forward, we really are looking to now what happens next. The image you see now, the Dream Chaser has been worked on and now has moved from NASA Dryden. And if you ever want to have some trauma, you put your one-of-a-kind unique space vehicle on the back of a truck and you drive it across the Rocky Mountains in the winter. It's less traumatic going to space, I think, than listening to that truck drive across. But it is now back home in Colorado where it's being outfitted and upgraded, and it's going to continue its flights both autonomously and then piloted here this year in 2014. And it's really quite a significant and fun experience. But what we wanted to talk about is we're not doing this alone. We went back, and a long time ago we made a decision, and the decision was we're not as smart as we think we are. And by doing that, we wanted to reach out and say, let's be realistic about what we can do. There are so many good people, so many good companies, so many good organizations in space. We wanted to have the best of the best here. We wanted to create our own America's Dream Team for space if we could, and we've done that over the years. We now have over 15 industrial companies. We have 8 NASA centers. We have a number of universities, and really finding people who know how to do this, because our goal is to fly as safely as possible, as soon as possible, and as efficiently as possible. And doing that by reaching out to everybody who's been involved in this program has really helped us. That goes beyond just the United States now. Several weeks ago we announced our expansion into Europe, and we have the European Space Agency has joined our efforts, as well as the DLR, the German Aerospace Center. We have Canada involved, and we're continuing to make this a global effort. That is a wonderful thing. One of the great things about this is that we now have employment on this program in 30 states around the United States. Places that most people wouldn't have thought of space places. And I've been to some of them, I've talked to them. There's one in New Jersey that has just a few people, and they have pictures of space all over their office now. They had no idea they were in the space industry or part of the space business. And it's that kind of a spirit, that kind of energy that we just love. And part of this is to realize that we're doing something special. And today is a special day. It is a launch, as many of you know. We're sending TDRS up to space, and Mike Gass and ULA are lifting that aboard an Atlas V, and that's always a very special moment. We have part of the Atlas that we build, so we're even more engaged on it. It's also a very special day because today happened to be Bob Cabena's birthday. Happy birthday, Bob. So you know you're good in the world when you've been able to go to space and you get to run Kennedy Space Center and you get to do launches on your birthday. I mean, that's one heck of a candle, isn't it, guys? It is the best candle we could have. I am enormously proud to have some amazing partners here and to be able to introduce them. And I'd like to start by bringing you to the announcement part of our day. When you start a company like this and you develop it, you look forward to certain aspects of what you can do. Building the Dream Chaser, seeing it fly was one of those. Today we're very proud to announce that we have now formally negotiated and are starting our orbital space flight. We have acquired an Atlas V rocket, and we have established a launch date, the first orbital date for Dream Chaser, to be November of 2016. So a little over 2 years from now, we're going to be taking this vehicle to space on board one of the best rockets that's ever been designed, the Atlas V. And I am quite fortunate to have Mike Gass as a partner and a friend. He has, in my mind, has done the impossible in that building ULA up from the company where all of a sudden you instantly have a very major company and you have to go through all the efforts to make that work. He's done a terrific job in doing that. He's guided the company through many different aspects, and we're just really, really pleased to be able to not only be launching on the Atlas, but to have the kinds of people and the friends and the support that we get from the United Launch Alliance. So, Mike, if I could, I'd like to turn it over to you and maybe say a few words about Atlas.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thanks so much for those kind comments. United Launch Alliance is honored that Sierra Nevada Corporation has purchased our proven Atlas V launch for its first flight in 2016, and we'll be ready, and I know your team will be ready as well. ULA and Sierra Nevada, you and I have been working together for many years, and on many projects and on the Dream Chaser since 2007. And both companies have invested significantly into the overall system and into the relationship with each other, as you mentioned, and that's just as important when you go into these endeavors. ULA understands and has decades of experience in launching from Florida, and we're excited about continuing to support this area with today's announcement. Quite exciting to be back in the human spaceflight business. With 42 successful missions spanning a decade of operational service, the commercially developed Atlas V is uniquely qualified to provide launch services for the crew transportation system. ULA is able to provide a wealth of flight data, design implementation experience, detailed system and subsystem analysis, qualification, certification documentation to support the Atlas V for human spaceflight. Over the last year, we've completed critical design milestones, the preliminary design review, the dual-engine Centaur, the Launch Complex 41 modifications, and an emergency detection system, all to support human spaceflight with the Dream Chaser. Next major milestones this year is the critical design review for all those same systems. You know, when I reflect about being in this business, it all goes back to some of the beginning, and to think that the Atlas rocket delivered men to space more than 50 years ago with John Glenn's flight on Mercury. And we're so excited at the prospect of delivering humans once again to help mankind explore the heavens. The Atlas V has unparalleled reliability and mission success records that helped you make the choice that we were the obvious choice for your system and the flight of U.S. astronauts. Thank you again, Mark, and the entire Sierra Nevada team for your confidence in Atlas V and my United Launch Alliance team. So thank you.
You're welcome, Mike. And I guess I could say if it's good enough for John Glenn, it's good enough for us. I think that's a pretty good statement, don't you think? I had the honor of introducing John at the 50th anniversary of his flight last year at the Smithsonian. And it was a wonderful experience for me, and you can imagine slightly intimidating to be able to sit there and talk about John and his exploits. But what was, I think, most fascinating that he and Scott Carpenter, who were both there that evening, didn't really want to talk about what they did. They wanted to know what we were doing and how we were getting there. And they had the same passion, the same excitement then as I think we do now. And this is what really space industry about, it is about that passion and about that energy. On the screen here, you see what the Dream Chaser will look like on the full Atlas stack. It's a very elegant look. We've been working on this for quite a long time. As we learn as pilots and in aviation, if it looks like it should fly, it will fly. And this looks like it should fly, and it will fly. And what you see on the right is our depiction of the major efforts behind this, and many lesser efforts that have been supporting us and still important. But the vehicle and much of the engineering and the management work is done in Colorado. The vehicle itself is built in Alabama, in Decatur, and that's a major part of what we're doing here. And the workforce there has been a tremendous addition to our team, and it's going to be launched here from Florida. So it's a real nice combination of being able to do the best that we could from around the country. We also have another series of updates and announcements, and we're fortunate enough to have, as I mentioned, many terrific partners. One of them has become an increasingly significant partner for us, and that's the Lockheed Martin Space Systems Group. Lockheed Martin needs no introduction from me. They've been doing work in aerospace and space for many years, including now building the Orion spacecraft. But what is most interesting, I think, is that what we've been doing over the last couple of years, Lockheed and Sierra Nevada, are trying to figure out how we could work together, how we could take the lessons from Orion, how we could use the facilities and infrastructure that Lockheed may have to advance Dream Chaser and to make it better and to make it work even more effectively than we think it could on our own. And we've been doing that in multiple ways. One is the picture you see up on the screen is the Michoud facility in Louisiana. Lockheed is now producing and constructing the composite shell for our next vehicle, the vehicle that will go to orbit on top of this Atlas V. And it's being worked on currently right now in Michoud. And these are pictures of the construction that's going on, and it's quite exciting to now start to say you actually have a fleet of vehicles from one, and the second one is on its way. We're quite fortunate doing that. We're also been working together with Lockheed on how we could get the lessons learned from Orion program on safety, on the way they do, on the way they're using human elements, and the two companies are working very well together on the certification products and how we certify our vehicle. The third thing that we are working on that I'd like to announce today is that we have decided to begin the efforts to work together to explore how we might use the operation and checkout facility here at Kennedy. The ONC facility has a long history and has quite an amazing feat of engineering itself. And we really believe, if we're going to move forward, that we need to take the best of what's existing and what has been, the best of the past, and the best of the people. There are some amazing people who are working here in the Florida area, many of whom would love to get back into human spaceflight again. And we're really making that happen. And I'm very proud and pleased to say that Lockheed and Sierra Nevada are working towards making that happen, so that the Dream Chaser would do its post-processing here when it comes back from space, and it will do its pre-processing to get ready to go to space here on the Kennedy Space Center. And I'd like to first thank Rick Ambrose and Jim Crocker, the leadership behind Lockheed Martin and Civil Space at Lockheed, for really reaching out and developing a new way of thinking. It isn't easy for Lockheed and companies like that to step down and say, let's really work together with what's going on in commercial space. Let's be partners in making this happen. And they've been terrific partners for me. We're very fortunate to have Larry Price here. Larry Price is a significant leader in the Orion program and has intimate knowledge of what's going on within the building and the facilities. And I'd like to turn it over to Larry and give you a chance to talk a little bit about what's going on in your building, and then take us through how Dream Chaser will be processed here.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I got to take the opportunity to say happy birthday to Bob. Can't miss that. Thank you very much. Mark mentioned at the beginning the close collaboration, the vision that he mentioned, Charlie Bolden. I want to bring that up because it seems disjointed sometimes, but there is a very systematic approach to commercial crew and deep space exploration. There's a lot of collaboration. Mark mentioned it, but there is a lot of Mark didn't mention that he's actually making components not only for the Atlas vehicle, but also for Orion. So there's work that NASA is doing that are developing parachutes and other systems that are being used on commercial. And what we're talking about is processing the vehicle here in Florida. The reason we picked Florida about 8 years ago was because of the proximity to the launch and ability to not only not have to transport large components that are necessary for long-duration deep space across the country on the back of a truck in the winter, but also to be able to use the same crew that you need here for launch processing to do, similar to Dream Chaser, refurbishment and assembly and checkout. So we could balance the workforce and increase the sustainability of the tremendous talent that's here on the Space Coast that's been groomed for over 50 years. So we have this very close collaboration with commercial across many, many areas. What we're doing in the operations and checkout facility, you probably all remember that it was an Apollo facility, tremendous high bay, and it is capable of to do more in it than we are with Orion. We're currently processing the Exploration Flight Test 1 to fly in September on one of Mike's very reliable vehicles. We picked the largest vehicle we could get hold of to do an early flight test, and Mike's company came through for us. So in that building, we are taking up most of the space of the building right now with the first flight of an article coming through, but processing in 2015 to fly in 2016 with the Dream Chasers. There's a tremendous opportunity to take advantage of what we've developed in what we think is a 21st century manufacturing capability here, augmenting the Space Coast capability. So I'll show you a short video of how it will fit in with what we're doing now. And I mentioned we're working with the team on other applications in the Michoud facility and such. Where was I?
The video's right there.
Oh, okay, we'll run the video. So this is the east end of the, or the west end of the operations and checkout facility. You could see a little bit of the Orion test cells on the far right-hand side of the video. So the vehicle can be brought in horizontally and deserviced and refurbished for the next flight, using a lot of the same technology and components that we use for that we're developing for the Orion currently in the checkout facility today. At the end of the processing facility, the horizontal checkout of the electronics and servicing of the thermal systems, and then installation of the adapter onto the Atlas and rotation up into the vertical position. So we think the last couple of years of what we're learning on a capsule with similar subsystems and heat shields and components is very applicable to what the Dream Chaser will need to do. And the ability to process multiple vehicles in the same facility, we can sustain the workforce and keep the proficiency up on the workforce. So they're doing these jobs in a more routine basis, so they will be done in a safer, more reliable manner. Thank you, Mark.
Very good. We've talked about how we're going to get to space. We talked about how we're going to get ready to go to space and how we're going to get ready to go back to space. The piece that's missing is how we're going to come home and land. And we want to talk about the full picture today. And we're very fortunate to be able to have another great partner in this time, the great state of Florida and Space Florida, to really talk about bringing Dream Chaser home and landing it here at the shuttle landing facility. If we could get the slides back up. Many of you have seen it, or have seen it in pictures, at least in video. This is where the shuttle has landed on its nominal trips back from space, and we are working with Space Florida and working with NASA to make that the home for Dream Chaser as we come back home from space. In this case, we'll be able to land here and then be able to come off of the SLF and return back to the processing facility at the ONC building and continue our flight work. And in doing that, we have a wonderful partner. Frank DeBello here has been a friend and a mentor and a guider for many years for me. He's also a terrific grandfather of now 4 kids. And I think we talk about not only are we doing this for ourselves, but we're doing it for them. That to be able to show that next generation that there's a path back to space and to have that kind of energy. I'd like to turn it over to Frank and have him just talk about the SOF for a few minutes and Space Florida's plans.
Very fine. Mark, thank you. But let me also thank all of our partners at this table, the Kennedy Space Center, Lockheed Martin Corporation, Sierra Nevada Corporation, and the United Launch Alliance for coming together today for this announcement, which is really a testament and a true reflection of the strength of the government, industry, and state partnership that has set the stage for Florida's success in the next generation of space commerce and exploration. Both tonight's launch of Atlas V, good luck, Mike, and today's significant and encouraging announcement by Sierra Nevada again demonstrate the continuing return on investment of this state's commitment to ensuring that Florida and the Cape Canaveral Spaceport Complex remain the nation's launch and spaceport leader. Sierra Nevada Corporation clearly had choices, but they recognize the strength of the unique and storied infrastructure that we have, the capability and talent that exists to support their success in next-generation space activity. The state is proud to have participated in much of the key infrastructure that is central to today's announcement through its longstanding partnership with Air Force, with NASA, and with industry. Back in 1999, Florida arranged a financial package that enabled Lockheed Martin to fund the launch pad improvements and begin a long-term beneficial lease arrangement with the state for the Launch Complex 41, where today's launch will occur with no risk to taxpayers. That investment continues to pay off for United Launch Alliance and the state, and so it will again tonight. In 2006, the state of Florida committed to invest $35 million to transform the famous but aged ONC building into a state-of-the-art final assembly and integration facility to process next-generation human spacecraft as part of this nation's exploration program. And for the first time, the Orion spacecraft hardware, with its hundreds of jobs, is being assembled here by Lockheed Martin at the NASA Exploration ONC facility. And today we celebrate the additional leveraging of that state investment into a new commercial partnership with Sierra Nevada. This afternoon, though, we are also celebrating yet a new opportunity for partnership between Florida and Sierra Nevada to further establish the Cape Canaveral Spaceport and the shuttle landing facility as the global cornerstone for future human spaceflight. For Space Florida, we're proud to serve as a key partner in assuring Sierra Nevada's mission success here on the Space Coast by providing a full range of landing and support capabilities. Mark, it's especially exciting for us as a team to team with a company so rich in space heritage, which you have, and one demonstrating such bold and exciting innovation in the Dream Chaser spacecraft. We look forward together to writing a new chapter in the legacy of commercial space exploration from Florida. And we're working with Enterprise Florida and the state's economic development, other states' economic development entities to finalize the capabilities and incentives required to nurture the long-term success of Dream Chaser here in Florida. It's our hope that Space Florida, Sierra Nevada Corporation, and Dream Chaser operations can become an integral part of a vibrant and diverse future commercial spaceport for horizontal landing and launch activities. at the unique and fabled SLF. We are currently in a negotiation process with NASA over the terms, conditions, and kind of mutual support that we can provide each other in making something that the taxpayers have paid for, which has a long, useful life yet remaining. And I'm very, very proud of the way that we've been working with NASA to achieve a transfer of the shuttle landing facility to state operations so that we continue to support all of our mission partners with future SLF support. So I thank you all for the partnership that we share, and you, Mark, for the friendship with the state of Florida.
You're quite welcome, Frank. And I could go on all day about Frank, but I think what you see is that his passion today is no less than his passion when he first got into this industry. And that's really what this is about. We've talked a lot about hardware today. I'd like to end the discussions to talk a little bit about people. People like the ones who are at the table, who wake up every day feeling like this is a wonderful day to be in what we're doing. We're very fortunate to be in the space industry and being able to do these great things. And I'm quite fortunate to have such an amazing team around me. And while I wish they all could be up here and stand behind us, all 2,700 people at Sierra Nevada, but we can't do that right now. So I wanted to at least bring and show you what I think is one of the integral parts of what we're doing, and that is connecting what NASA is and has been to what we're going to be in the future. And I'm very proud to introduce Steve Lindsay, who is our Senior Director and Program Manager for Dream Chaser. He's a friend and colleague, and Steve has got an amazing background, and I get to brag on him a little bit, but he's had a long history both at the Air Force and with NASA. Prior to joining us, he spent over 20 years at the Air Force as a test pilot and logged over 7,000 hours of flying on over 50 different types of aircraft. He also then went into becoming a leader at NASA, both in leading NASA's going forward in the space program as well as being involved as an astronaut. And he had the fortune of flying on 5 different missions, being a pilot on 2 and a commander on 3. He served as the chief of the International Space Station operations for the astronaut office, spent a lot of time helping to run the major programs for NASA and the astronaut corps, and then wound up being chief of the astronaut office for a number of years. He's logged over 1,500 hours in space, and I think most importantly for today, we had some fun this morning. We all went out to the SLF, and Steve was the final commander of the Discovery as it landed now a little over 2 years ago. And there is a wonderful plaque that exists out on the runway that we went to visit today, and to talk about that connection between the past and the future. So I'd like to turn it over to Steve Lindsay to say a few words. Steve, you see Discovery landing. How was your landing, Steve?
Well, I wanted to talk about that, so I'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, it's great to be here. I don't think I've been in this room since after that flight there, my last press conference here, and so it's great to be back here at Kennedy Space Center. And you know, I got a chance to fly 5 flights here, and I can tell you the dedication and the commitment of the people here at Kennedy Space Center, supporting this program, supporting us. Every time I walked out to vehicle to fly, I felt great comfort knowing the kind of team that was behind it. And Discovery flew more than any other vehicle, and I can honestly say that when we landed Discovery on that final flight, 39 flights later, that there was absolutely nothing wrong with the vehicle. The vehicle was absolutely perfect. Every single system, subsystem, backup system, to the smallest sensor was working perfectly on that last flight. And that's a tribute to the folks on the Space Coast here, the dedication of the team and the passion of the team for the space program here, which is why we're here today. So on this landing, if you notice, looks like my left main gear touched down first and my right main gear hasn't touched down yet. And so some people are kind of wondering what the heck I was doing. You know, you'd think after 5 times I'd figure it out, but is actually that landing was the most difficult shuttle landing I ever had to do. The winds were very, very strong. They were outer limits at about 30 feet there. I picked up, I actually went from a strong crosswind to no crosswind, which is like a gust, and the vehicle is trying to drive off the runway. So I spent the last 30 feet trying to keep the vehicle on the runway, which is why you can see I'm in a little bit of a bank trying to maintain the runway when we finally touched down. So it was a tough landing, but a challenging landing. But fortunately, I had good training, and my training started way back in 1995 when I became an astronaut candidate. And one of the first things you do in that training is we had our very first sim, which is actually an approach and landing simulator. and we get into the shuttle motion-based sim and with an instructor, and they teach us how to land the orbiter. So it was myself and Rick Husband, who is the commander of Columbia, a great friend of mine, and I won't talk about that, but he and I were in a sim together, and it was going to be our first one, and we were young astronaut candidates. And so we found out we were going to have this sim that night, and it was going to be with this very, very intimidating, the chief of the astronaut office. And when you're a young ASCAN, going to the chief of the astronaut office is a really big deal. And having him teach you in a sim, knowing that your career is in his or her hands, is a very intimidating thing. Anybody want to guess who that chief of the astronaut office was? Birthday Bob Kamana. So Rick and I went trembling and shaking into the simulator, and Bob proceeded to attempt to teach us how to fly the space shuttle with varying degrees of success. I won't comment on how we did that night. I think I threw away the grade sheet because I didn't want to look at it. But seriously, that was a challenging landing, and it was challenging to fly the shuttle. But I do want to thank Bob, and it's appropriate that his birthday, but for his leadership, his mentorship, a man of integrity, who taught us how to fly, who gave me the opportunity for my first flight, and set me on the course I am today. So thank you, Bob. After I flew the final flight here, and like everybody, I believe passionately in human space flight and wanting to continue that. With the space shuttle program ending, I was looking for an opportunity. Where could I make the most impact? What could I do to keep that dream alive? Because I thought it was really, really important to continue the legacy, the vision of sustained human space flight for our nation, and I wanted to do everything I could do to continue that vision. More importantly, I wanted to help continue the legacy of the Space Shuttle program, a wonderful lifting body, what I believe is the future of low Earth orbit that can do all kinds of things, can land anywhere, land on a runway, anytime abort, and do all of those things. And a versatile spacecraft that goes well beyond actually the space station. It goes on to future all kinds of activities you can imagine in a low Earth orbit. And so because of that, Mark came to me with his vision, and I bought into that vision, and I've been working on the Dream Chaser program here for about 2.5 years now. And we have a passionate team that Mark has addressed, talked about, that's all over the country, that believes and has bought into the same vision that I do. And we are bound and determined to go into space and fly this no matter what, and we will do it. So as Mark mentioned, if you go to the next chart, please. We had the opportunity to do our first flight test out at Edwards Air Force Base in October of this last year. And we took a team from scratch, starting with nothing. We built this vehicle from the ground up, starting with nothing. And we did lots of analysis and lots of testing, and did a lot of work. But you really never know whether a vehicle that's never flown before is going to fly until you finally have to say, okay, we've done enough testing, it's time to release it and let it fly. And so we let it fly, and I can tell you that she flew just beautifully all the way down. As Mark mentioned, just matched predictions nearly exactly, which gave us tremendous confidence not only in our team's ability to design and build and to test a spacecraft, but our analysis capability to be able to predict how it's going to fly and then make it do what we say it was going to do. So I can't be more proud of our team in doing that and in making all of that happen. As it happens, when we flew that flight, coincidentally, it was to the day 36 years after the Enterprise had flown out at Edwards during the approach and landing test. So it's kind of interesting how we're repeating history, taking the lessons learned from the space shuttle and applying it directly to the Dream Chaser and advancing lifting body technology to the next generation. So to kind of close here, as I was out there this morning looking at the Discovery plaque, they put a plaque on the SLF for the last 3 landings for the last 3 vehicles. I looked at that plaque and remembering back to the flight test we did at Edwards, and I realized that it's been about 2.5 years, maybe a little bit more, since the last space shuttle landed here. And I thought, that is way, way too long. And we intend to do something about it, and we intend to do something about it very, very soon. So I'm looking forward to the day that when our vehicle comes out here, and instead of us sitting in a press conference here, we're out at LC-41, and you're seeing our vehicle on top of the Atlas launching, going up to space, communicating through mission control to the space station using the very tedious satellite that is launching tonight, coming back, landing in the shuttle landing facility with this great Florida team, and continuing the proud tradition that was started, the proud tradition here that was started by the Space Shuttle program and by the Florida Space Coast over 30 years ago. Thanks, Mark.
Steve, that's a wonderful recap, and if you can imagine, you multiply that passion times a couple of thousand, and you'll know what fortunate person I am to have this kind of person and this kind of team behind me. It's an amazing experience that makes me realize, coming from a few people, how you can really grow something if you have a belief in it and if people want to get behind it. And that's what I think we're feeling. And that goes around the country. We have offices and facilities and people who are watching from all over our country. But today's also about a Florida story, and we're very pleased. We have about 300 people working for us in S&C here in Florida. We're expecting that to significantly increase over the life of this program. We're looking at probably at least a couple hundred people for ourselves, and then the extension of all the contractors and people that are working with us. And that's we think that's a start. We hope that it's going to grow a lot further than that, but it's the beginnings of where we are. So to sort of tie up today, this is our final chart for the day. It tries to put together a picture of what this is going to be like. Essentially, the vehicle is assembled and put together from components and systems and from the work from all over the country, and that's being done in Colorado and will continue to be done there. Concurrently with, as that's being put together and we're getting the vehicle from the many different suppliers and contractors and partners, we're going to be building the rocket in Decatur, and ULA is going to be doing that and making that happen. As the vehicle is done, the vehicle will then be brought over to the KNCO&C facility, and the Atlas rocket, when it's completed, will be moved over to the operations center, which you see in the middle of the slide. We'll be taking care of whatever payload needs to go on the Dream Chaser, and it will then be mated with the Atlas in the integration facility. From there, it will be moved over to Complex 41, where it will be launched successfully on time, Mike promises. And it will then do what it needs to do in orbit. Dream Chaser will be in orbit in a matter of hours. It will be able to stay in orbit for an extended period of time and can depart the space station once departed and be on the ground here in about 8 hours. It will come back to the SLF, land here successfully, and it will. We're all trying to see if we can meet Steve's mark of landing perfectly on the center line, which we saw today. It's a hard mark to get to, but we will do that, and once it lands, it will then be moved over to be ready for its next flight. We expect to have a fleet of these vehicles, much like the shuttle, with different purposes. Some will be all crew, some will be crew and cargo, some will be servicing, and we also think that at some point there'll be independent science ability with the vehicle. So it's a multi-use vehicle. We like to think of it as our space SUV, and we're very proud of it. So as I close, and that is our last slide for today, I just wanted to really thank you all for this. It's the American public, it's the passion for space that really makes a difference. You don't have to go very far to see the movie Gravity and the numbers that it posted and everything else that goes on in our industry to see that space is really a part of our culture, not just because of the technology, but because of the human passion behind it. We need to explore, we want to explore, we need to be better than we are today. And our team and what we're trying to do today is hopefully providing a small piece of that. I thank you so much for what you've done and for your support, and I continue to look forward to be able to show you how we're progressing. And today's a big day for us in many ways, and hopefully a big day for all you as well, to see that this program is moving forward for us and the entire program. So thank you, NASA, for taking the time today and making this work, Bob. And we're ready for your birthday party tonight. The biggest candle in the world will be lit in a few hours, and we'll be able to enjoy it and all sing to you as we do that. I'll be open for questions now. We have about 15 minutes for questions on TV and broadcast, and then if there are continuing questions, we'll stay around for as long as we can. Several people here, Bob and Mike, have to leave to go, I think, take care of a launch tonight, but we'll let them go do that. So if we can, I'll open up the floor.
Okay, please let us know if you have a question by raising your hand. We're pleased today to be joined not only by the traditional media members, but some social media members who are attending the NASA Social for the Tracking and Data Relay satellite launch tonight, so welcome here. We also have some folks on the phone bridge. So given the short time frame of 15 minutes, we ask that you please limit yourself to one question. Wait for the radio microphone to come around, identify yourself and your affiliation, and to whom you're addressing your question. And we'll start off in the room with James Dean from Florida today.
Thanks so much. Congratulations, Mark. This maybe is like 1.5 questions, but either of the first 2 launches here contemplate crews, or when might that begin? And could you just clarify if this timeline and the deal to purchase the Atlas V and launch is contingent on you winning a TCAP award?
Sure, James. Thanks for coming out. And since you're here in Florida, you get a 1.5 questions. The first flight will be an autonomous flight of the vehicle, fully autonomous flight, non-crewed. The second flight will be a crewed orbital vehicle flight for us. We have committed to the launch and have put down and are entering in the contracting process to make that happen, and we intend to move that launch forward. What happens after the contract award happens or not happens, we'll decide then, but we are moving forward on the program for this one.
Jason.
Jason Ryan for SpaceflightInsider.com, and I'm thinking this is either the Mark or Steve. For those of us old enough in the room who can remember the shuttle program's beginnings, and we saw these slides of how easy it would be to process, noted that the video showed that when Dream Chaser went into the ONC, it had a similar kind of look. However, you guys seem to be hitting those marks of what you say you're going to do, and like you showed in the other side with the flight profile, pretty accurately. Are you fairly confident that the processing flow that you predict for Dream Chaser will match up to the illustrations we're currently seeing?
We are, but we will also say the reason why we're pretty confident in what we do is that we try to be conservative in saying what we do. We've spent a lot of time, well over 2 years, looking at how we can process. We are working with a terrific partner in Lockheed who's been doing this for a long time. This is a known building. It's a known process. The people there, which are really the key to making something happen, they know what they're doing. This isn't something we're starting from the ground up, and that gives us a lot of confidence in how we can accomplish this. We've put some margin in to make sure that we're able to do that, and I think we're being realistic in terms of how long we think we're going to take to move it around. So it's really based on the fact that we're dealing with a known entity with known processing and known people, and we know our vehicle pretty well too after having built it from the ground up. So
the other thing I would say is that we've onto our team we brought a lot of folks from Kennedy Space Center, from shuttle processing, and one of the first things we did, we looked at what the challenges in shuttle processing were and tried to eliminate those challenges out of our flow and out of our vehicle design. And so our vehicle is, for example, you don't have hypergolic fuels on our vehicle, and that was a big processing hit here. Our thermal protection system is 1/17 the size of the thermal protection system on the shuttle. So, and the shape of our vehicle makes it a little easier to manufacture tiles and things like that. So there's a number of things that we've done. We've tried to take all those lessons learned and apply it so that we can streamline our processing and make things go faster. So we intentionally looked at that to try to make it go faster and make it easier and simpler and safer as well.
Thanks for the compliment and the question.
We're going to go to the phone bridge for a quick question. And for those of you on the phone bridge, please press *1 to get in the queue. We'll take a question first from Alan Boyle. Alan?
Hi. Thanks for taking the question, and congrats on the deal. Could you provide a little more detail on who's paying for what the financial arrangements are going to be, please?
Alan, we can't go into the details of the financial arrangements other than to say this is a direct relationship between Sierra Nevada and ULA, and Sierra Nevada is paying for the efforts of this. It's unconnected to the NASA program. The purchase of the launch was something done from company to company. The details and the pricing and those details are not something that we're going to disclose, but it is a confirmed launch date. It is a confirmed payment on the launch to start the process working, and it's a agreement between United Launch Alliance and Sierra Nevada directly.
Okay, continuing on the phone bridge, we'd like to take a question from Irene Klotz. Irene?
Of commercial crew.
Hi, Irene.
I think that Alan had a follow-up question.
Sorry, Alan, I didn't hear your follow-up.
We didn't hear it, Alan.
Just a quickie. Were you saying that you would go ahead with this whether or not you received money in the next round of commercial crew from NASA?
We are planning to launch. We are building the vehicle to be launched, and we have made a commitment to the launch.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's go to Irene Klotz.
Thanks. I have a question for Mr. Gass. I wanted to know if you're also preparing for a CST-100 test flight. And for Mark, if you could just describe what you want to do on the 2016 flight. Thanks.
I think it's well known that we have been supporting Boeing CST-100 and been under contract with them for prepping their vehicle for flight, as well as Sierra Nevada. So yes, we are preparing for a flight. Different business arrangements, different timing between the two companies, but making good progress with them as well. And it's some good synergy between the two programs that help us make it cost efficient and cost effective for both programs.
Irene, I'm going to ask Steve to talk about a little bit about what our first flight's going to look like. Steve?
Yeah, Irene, for the 2016 flight, what we're going to do is we're going to launch out LC-41, and we will not be going to space station. It'll be an uncrewed orbital flight of several orbits, probably a day-long mission or so, landed back on the West Coast. The purpose of that will be to test out our launch, orbital operations, autonomous entry, descent, and landing, which is something we need to certify for the eventual ISS missions as well. So it'll be an autonomous flight. The vehicle will be basically identical to the vehicle we'll fly a year later when we put crew on it. And so our intent is to have all of those systems and subsystems on board and checked out, and use this on the path to certification for the orbital crewed vehicle.
Good.
Okay,
Thank you, Irene. Next question.
I'm sorry. We'll take one more on the phone bridge before coming back here. Robert Perlman from Collect Space. Robert?
Hi, thanks. A question for Mark or Steve. Are there other test flights that you need to do before the November 2016 space flight approach and landing? I know you just mentioned that you're going back to the West Coast, but will you be doing any approach and landing at the SLF, or what other big milestones between now and the 2016 flight?
Sure, Steve. Go ahead.
So what we're going to do is we're, as Mark mentioned, the engineering test articles back at Louisville. We are building it now. We're actually putting on more orbital, more redundancy, more hardware and flight software that is the orbital stuff. We're going to go fly it out at Edwards again, doing another autonomous flight or two. Then we're going to bring it back. We're going to outfit it with an ejection seat, and we're going to do crewed atmospheric flight testing, much like the Enterprise ALT program. About a year later, and all of those are flight test milestones along the way to this first orbital flight in 2016. So we have a lot more testing to go. We don't plan on doing the atmospheric flight testing here at Kennedy. We plan to do the real flight testing in the real orbital flight here at Kennedy.
Okay, back in the room.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Ryan Lores with the NASA Social. I actually am not sure who could answer this question. It's pertaining to the design of the vehicle, the similarities between that and the STS. What design advantages are you getting from the wings being up compared to like a regular vehicle, airplane, or something like that? Sure. If you could, please.
I'll let Steve answer that in a second, but I want to just start by saying one of the great benefits that I had and we had going into this is that we were able to look at 135 shuttle flights and the whole history of the shuttle program. This vehicle was originally, before we took it over, was originally a NASA design called the HL-20. And the HL-20 was meant to be the crew rescue vehicle for the space station at one point in time. So NASA had worked on it for almost a decade and done a tremendous amount of work on it, and then decided didn't need that as a crew rescue vehicle. We took the program up and over. So we had the benefit of not only almost a decade of work on this lifting body design, but also the whole history of the shuttle program. And it was one of the things that we went into as we looked at the design. So Steve, you want to finish that?
Yeah, I can. The vehicles are very similar. I mean, probably the fundamental difference between the space shuttle and us is the space shuttle was designed to carry a huge amount of cargo. So it has a big payload bay designed originally to do that. We're primarily designed, we can carry cargo or a mix of cargo and people, but we're primarily designed as a people carrier. And so it's a smaller shape, as Mark mentioned, it's a proven shape in terms of wind tunnel testing and CFD that Langley did to develop it. It's a lifting body, whereas the shuttle was more of a winged vehicle. The lift-to-drag ratio, for example, between the two vehicles are very, very identical. We're going to use a little different software and guidance algorithm to fly it. but things like cross range and capabilities are very, very similar to the space shuttle. It has basically the same capabilities as the space shuttle, but one of the big differences is, besides it's a much smaller vehicle, we've taken all the lessons learned, as I mentioned before, the space shuttle. So, ultimately we're trying to do this for a fraction of the cost of the space shuttle. So a lot of it is processing, a lot of it is safety lessons learned by putting a tougher thermal protection system on it to protect it better, riding on top of the rocket instead of the side of the rocket, so we don't have to worry about debris during ascent and things like that. And so all those lessons learned from the space shuttle we're trying to apply to make it safer and much more cost effective than we've done before.
Go ahead. Yeah, we have about 2 to 3 minutes left, and we'd like to wrap it up with a question on the phone from Kristen Painter from the Denver Post. Kristen?
Hi, thanks for taking the call, guys. This question could go to either Frank or Mark. I know you have reassured the Colorado contingency that the existing work will stay in the state at its headquarters, but I'm curious as to the incentive package and negotiations that Frank mentioned for Sierra Nevada, and if this leaves the door open for greater expansion of your relationship, kind of beyond the pre- and post-processing of the flight operations. Yeah.
Sure, I'll take that. We are being very specific in looking to different parts of the country to make sure that we get the best of each area. Our intention here in Florida is to do what we said, which is to launch and to process the vehicle. We are concurrently with doing this expanding our Colorado operations. As it turns out, all three of the companies represented here, United Launch Alliance, Lockheed Martin Space Systems, as well as we, are headquartered in Colorado for our efforts. And we will see a significant and very similar kind of growth of jobs in Colorado. So we're doing this to try to bring the best of the best from around the country to the table, and I think we're doing it in a way that makes sense for all included. And we don't see any change in the commitment to the states that we're in. We're actually just adding on to that and realizing that we're moving into a different phase now, which is the launch phase and the processing phase, which needs to be and should be done here where their history has begun. So thank you, Christian, for that. And I think with that, I'll turn it back over to our moderator.
All right. Well, thank you all very much today for coming. This has been very enlightening, and we look forward to future endeavors here at the Kennedy Space Center. The next event of note is tonight with the launch of the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite L at 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time. NASA television coverage will begin at 6:30 p.m., so please tune in for that. Once again, thank you for coming. Still working on the